there are developed member states and there are developing member states, the countries which are still on the developing stage. So how do you think a developed member state would be able to help a developing member state? Well, one of the themes I understand is fair sharing of benefits and then also capacity building. So how do you see that happening and what role would IMO play there?
In terms of the sharing of benefits, the IMO legal framework does not regulate this aspect of the BBNJ. The BBNJ agreement has 4 main pillars. This is the area-based management tools, and this is the main focus of IMO. Then there is environmental impact assessment, also which touches upon the IMO legal framework. Then there is the marine genetic resources and the sharing of benefits. And this is the area that IMO is not really dealing with. We do not regulate the marine genetic resources. And then there is the cooperation and technical cooperation and capacity building. And this is, of course, an area that is a huge area for IMO. And I think that later on today we will also have panel about the capacity building.
After this, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that also colleagues will share the knowledge and the experience about how IMO is building capacity among member states, developing countries, how developed countries share also resources and knowledge with developing countries. So I don't want to really take back from my colleagues later on.
Yeah. So, Marina, with your background and with WWF, how do you see this collaboration between NGOs, shipping companies, and governments improve the marine ecosystem protection? How do you see this happening? Like, not only WWF, but all NGOs, how do you see them playing a role in this?
Thank you for this very important question. So I would say that, of course, every organization has a role to play. Consider NGOs and universities and research institutions as the experts on marine biodiversity, right? So we can offer scientific evidence in terms of what are the risks of collision, as I mentioned earlier, what are the critical habitats for marine biodiversity, and so on. But the whole idea is to come with the industry with, again, evidence, but with the intention of a dialogue. Of course, the shipping industry is the operational expert. So you guys are aware of what are the limitations, in terms of operating at sea. So the idea is, how do we come together to look at feasible solutions? And one example of brilliant collaboration between NGOs and industry comes from the Mediterranean in Greece, where it's my home country, actually. So I'm not picking this example because I'm from Greece, but because I really love that as a lighthouse case study. So we came together with my colleagues and research institutions, and we worked with a number of shipping industry owners. And the idea was that in the Hellenic Trench, which is one of the busiest, if you like, trading route, right, there is an overlap with critical habitats for one of the most endangered sperm whale population in the Mediterranean. So the idea is we came together, we look at risk assessments, we look at maps, and we come together with the industry to look at what measures can be put in place. So again, throughout the route, there was measures such as rerouting. Of course, not everywhere this was possible. So some sort of reduction of speed was also decided upon. And when that was also not possible in a consistent way, what we did together with the government, we issued guidelines for the maritime sector, but also we issued a system. So when a whale was spotted within the maritime route, there was almost real-time notification. So then there was a recommendation for slowing down, right? So it's a brilliant example of how voluntary measures can be put in place as well. And we see already measurable outcomes from these voluntary measures and very positive feedback from the industry as well. So this is just an example.
Is there any data on vessel wildlife interactions as to is there any data which tells us that this has been happening and there has been damage to the
Yes.
wildlife at sea?
Yes, of course. All of that has to be substantiated with evidence. So I think the first thing that we're looking at is that whales come to the shore. Of course, they're dead. So we're looking at cause of death. So we're looking at propeller marks or, and essentially attributing their death to ship strikes. But obviously, we're using as well models and satellite imagery. We're using overlapping, if you like, their trade routes, AIS data, with critical habitats, so we're able to look at the hotspots, if you like. And obviously all of that is correlated and validated by the shipping industry. And then similarly, you're monitoring the effectiveness of that in a similar way.
Okay. So, this brings us to the point of marine protected areas, the MPAs, and the routes, the shipping routes, the operations, right, where the ships move. So, Dorota, I have a question for you. How do you see the establishment of marine protected areas under the BBNJ Treaty affecting commercial shipping routes and operations?
Yes, this is indeed one of the main pillar of the BBNJ agreements are the area-based management tools. What it means, the area-based management tools are the marine protected areas. In the IMO terminology, we call them particularly sensitive sea areas. So the difference between marine protected areas and the PSSAs are that MPAs are areas protected for various purposes. For example, in one area there is a period of time when the turtles need a special protection and there are measures to protect them, or a fish specific species need a protection, and then there are measures adopted, and they are they can be adopted under a treaty, like for example the Biodiversity Treaty or Antarctic Treaty, but they also can be adopted under the national laws.
Yep.
So these areas are usually under the national jurisdictions. Then when we turn to IMO is the competent organization to establish particularly sensitive sea areas, and these are tools that apply to to ships, to maritime transport. So these are exclusively measures applying to the shipping industry, and these are measures adopted exclusively by IMO. So when we think in terms of area-based management tools under the BBNJ, in terms of IMO, we think particularly sensitive sea areas. The particularly sensitive sea areas that were established so far by IMO, and these quite often overlap with MPAs, for example, the Great Barrier Reef or the areas around the northwestern Mediterranean Sea, or the areas around Florida and Hawaii. These are very often areas that are the PSSAs on the one hand and MPAs on the other hand. So they correlate, they coexist, they do not exclude each other. The PSSAs that were established by IMO so far are established in the areas under the national jurisdiction. So we are not there yet to go beyond national jurisdiction, although the PSS guidelines do not limit the measures only to the areas under the national jurisdiction. But we also have to think in terms of shipping and how ships operate. If ships are generally cleaner, better equipped, better design, use better quality of fuels, they comply, and they are better not only in PSSAs, they are better overall. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a wider protection of the marine environment and biodiversity. So IMO will be working together with the BBNJ parties to either improve the PSSAs or to expand them if that was a wish of the BBNJ COP. And we will be looking at IMO at measures that apply to shipping and how they can be implemented and enforced. So, for example, in particularly sensitive sea areas, as Maria said, there are special routes for ships, or there are special equipments for ships, or the ban on dumping of waste, or special measures to protect the biodiversity. And ships have to comply with those additional measures in the particularly sensitive.
But so in my previous role, before I joined Bureau Veritas, I was doing the commercial part of the shipping, as I spoke about it yesterday, where we looked at the number, the TCE, that what money is the vessel making every day, right? So slowing down or rerouting may cause extra cost, delays. I understand benefits will include reduced risk of collision with whales, underwater radiated noise, and then enhanced reputation for sustainable shipping. Yes, which big ship owners would love. But then finally, there's a cost to it. So how do you see this cost being covered? And I'll come to you also, Maria, on this.
Yeah, no problem.
So you could take it first, Sarvata, if you want.
You're the expert on this topic.
Who would pay the bill? That's my question.
You and I.
Exactly.
I think we all will be paying, this is kind of our shared responsibility to protect oceans. And whether it will be the industry, the ship owners, or the equipment providers, or the end consumers, we all will bear the cost of protection of the oceans, the cost that, on the one hand, we think of it in terms of the cost. On the other hand, we have to think about it in terms of the benefit for all of us. Because, as we said at the very beginning, the oceans is our life. This is our obligation and our opportunity as well. Yes. So if it is our obligation, we have to take this obligation seriously.
Marina, what would be your take on this, balancing the operational demands with biodiversity conservation goals?
My take on this first is that personally, I'm particularly interested in finding that balance, because I've been working for the conservation world for 15 years, but before I was also working for the private sector. So finding actionable, feasible measures that make sense is actually quite important. And also it's important to recognize that the industry is also under pressure to meet the bold decarbonization commitments, right? So yes, we hear a lot from the private sector in general that, it's important to tackle climate change first, let's just measure, reduce our emissions first, let's just tackle everything else later. The one thing though that is important to also be said is that it's also a missed opportunity, because you might have multiple benefits with just one single measure, and you're missing that opportunity. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So, for example, you mentioned earlier noise pollution, right? This is one of the biggest pressures, again, of shipping industry to marine biodiversity. So we're seeing now, actually, the experts from the maritime industry are reporting that just by upgrading your fleet, you might have actually co-benefits in reducing cumulatively noise pollution, right? So what a missed opportunity if you don't see it more holistically as a solution, right? And I would also say that nobody's expecting the private sector and the shipping industry to be perfect at once. It's a journey, right? There's guidance in terms of how do you looking at it from a transition point of view. And I would say the most important thing is to start now, really understand what your risks. And I love what Dorota mentions, that maybe it's not about only our shared stewardship, is around effectiveness. Specifically on this topic, because we discussed that also earlier, I would say that can we potentially change the question that is it slowing down, or is it actually optimizing speed for the whole duration of the trip? And I think, Ankur, you're also the expert on this. It would be good to hear from you on this. We're hearing a lot from the industry players, the concept of sail fast, then wait, right? So you essentially speed up across the ocean and then you wait a lot of the times at port because the berth is not ready to process your shipment, right? So what if you deploy tools like the just-in-time arrival or voyage planning to really look at the trip holistically, right? Slow down in the areas that is needed, that there's risks of collision or whatever else the reason would be from a health and safety perspective too, and really optimize your operations and your trip holistically. That would be my proposition. What if we do that? And could we have more efficient operations that have those triple wings, right? CO2 emissions reduction, biodiversity gains, sometimes also air quality as well gains, and health and safety gains. So can we look at it from that angle? So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. See, it means one of the key ways to decarbonize has been speed reduction, right? Because that is the easiest. I must say that, but it comes with a lot of obligations with the charter party, right? So just in time has been there. Means it's not a new concept, right? But the energy majors, the big charterers, the traders, they need to be on board with you. We could have this discussion, we could all sit here and talk, but are the energy majors with us? And if they are, and then this could happen. There's something called as virtual arrival clause. I'll not get into the depth of it, but which says that, okay, you could arrive when the port is ready to receive you, and you could go at a slower speed. Means LNG carriers, they can go up to 20 knots, but the average speed for last 2 years for LNG carriers was only about 14.7 knots. So actually they were at a slower speed than what they're supposed to be. So yeah, I totally agree with you. That's a very good point. But how that implementation would happen, that's something that we will see. So Dorota, that gets me to a very important point. Do you think that BBNJ treaty would give the ship owners some kind of advantage when it comes to green financing or reduced port dues? Okay, if I'm calling the port, I know my port dues will be discounted by 30%, let's say, because I slowed down the ship where I was supposed to do it, and I followed exactly what was expected out of this agreement.
The BBNJ treaty doesn't really go that deep into the operational part of the shipping industry or other industries. It regulates the activities in the areas beyond national jurisdiction, but it doesn't specifically target any activity. It provides that the activities will be regulated and controlled by the jurisdiction under which the activities are approved. In the case of the shipping industry, the first that comes into mind is the flag state, obviously, yes, because ships operating on the high seas are still under the jurisdiction of the flag state, and it will be the flag state responsibility to ensure that ships comply with any measures that are introduced to protect biodiversity. And again, I think that it is both the obligation and the opportunity for the shipping industry to show that it is really an industry looking forward, looking into the protection of our oceans and including the biodiversity and the measures that will be developed by IMO and under the IMO auspices to also complement the BBNJ agreement.
All right. Thank you. So we have another about, let's say, 8 to 10 minutes. So I'd start getting towards the end of the session now. So let's talk on integrating BBNJ requirements and opportunities, right? So the question for you would be, what challenges do you foresee in integrating BBNJ requirements, such as EIAs, environmental impact assessments, between IMO and the global ocean governance bodies?
I think that the biggest challenge was for us during the negotiations of the BBNJ agreement and will be in the future is to work with member states. As I said, the biggest player here are member states parties to the IMO treaties and to the BBNJ agreement, and to ensure that they speak the same voice on both platforms, on both international arenas, so that there is cooperation and collaboration between member states and between the other stakeholders, the industry, the non-governmental organizations, and also intergovernmental organizations. So, for example, during the negotiations, we were working together with other IGOs, such as the International Seabed Authority, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Labor Organization, to ensure that our frameworks are not negatively impacted by the negotiations. But on the other hand, we were also working with our member states to ensure that they are aware of what is going on in New York. As you know, IMO is based in London. The BBNJ negotiations were taking place in New York, and our role as the representing IMO as an observer delegation during the BBNJ negotiations was to ensure that there is the information that member states and our stakeholders are well aware of what is going on where, and we will continue doing that. And this is the challenge that we are facing to make sure that there is this flow of information between the two frameworks and the two bodies. And we will be working on it for the years to come to ensure this cooperation and collaboration.
But do you think this treaty was really complex and that was the reason that it took 20 years to negotiate a treaty? Or is it normal? I mean, I'm not expert at IMO matters, so.
It really depends on how you look at the treaty making process. Is a long process, yes, and the BBNJ agreement is a complex agreement. It has 75 articles which are very elaborate, and it has also annexes. It has to be it has to comply with UNCLOS, but also with other international legal frameworks, such as the IMO legal framework. So it was quite sensitive and quite elaborated process to come up with this agreement. Lots of preparations, lots of discussions, and it is not only the intergovernmental conferences that took place, 1 week or 2 weeks of real sitting at the table and negotiating the agreement, but also many intersessional meetings, many correspondence and working groups behind during the negotiations of the BBNJ agreement. But also at IMO, we had information sessions for our member states and discussions with our stakeholders. So I would say that the preparatory work that took us eventually to the intergovernmental conference was quite long, but it was very important to get to come up with the basic principles and the basic objectives that the agreement would want to achieve, and that would also be complementary to the other agreements and other frameworks that exist. So even though if we look at, okay, it took 20 years to negotiate this agreement, but it took only 2 years to ratify it, and it will enter into force next year, and there we are, yes? We are very much looking forward of how this will work and how IMO can also play here with the BBNJ framework.
Well, congratulations on that. So, so much of hard work is done by IMO. So, Marina, how do you see this as an opportunity? The collaboration between IMO and the global government bodies, NGOs. How do you see this as an opportunity? I mean, she spoke about challenges, of course, but opportunities.
Sure. And again, it is a complex issue, but the complexity is out there as well. Let's not forget that. So we need more sophisticated frameworks, more and more, because it's getting busy out there, right? So again, as Dorota said, the BBNJ is not only about the maritime industry, it's about all maritime users out there. And the opportunity, as you mentioned there, is that it offers that framework to cooperate amongst each other, right? Specifically for the shipping industry, it's also an opportunity because whatever the other industries or states proposing, you have the opportunity to also get consulted, right? Or offer information as well that will be relevant. So let's just look at that as well, that you have that seat on the table in terms of what's going to happen in the oceans, more and more in the next few years. The other thing, again, is all about multiple sectors. There are some sectors that rely on healthy seas more than others, of course, like fisheries, and it offers that level playing field, right? So it's not about who grabs, first the high seas and exploits it. Is how do we look at that holistically and collectively and in a coordinated way. So I think that that's where the opportunity is. Will it take time to figure out the mechanism? It will, but I don't think there's an alternative, to be honest with you. So we need that sort of break that fragmented approach and the silos. As I mentioned, it's going to get busy out there. So yeah.
And that's very important, the fragmented approach, and we need to break that. Oh, thank you for getting that. Well, we have the last 5 minutes left in this session now. So before we start closing, just in 1 minute, Dorota, could you elaborate, but in 1 minute, what is the 30-30 target? It says 30-30 target in the treaty. What does that mean?
It means that at least 30% of the sea areas will be protected by 2030. This will include the PSSAs and other marine protected areas. It is not only the responsibility of IMO. As I said, IMO is adopting those measures and those area-based management tools which regulate and impact shipping. But there are other industries like the fishing industry, exploration and exploitation of marine genetic resources, or the exploration and exploitation of the seabed. So all those organizations, all those bodies have to come together and again, everything comes back to member states and to states parties to treaties. They have to achieve this goal, this objective of 30% of protected areas globally to be introduced and to be implemented by 2030.
All right. So let's do the final question to both of you. Right, Marina, I'll take you first.
Okay.
What steps do you see the shipping industry and the IMO should take to prepare for the agreement and ensure legal clarity? You could speak from the side of course, Emirates Nature WWF, and how does in your WWF you plan to assist stakeholders in understanding the treaty?
It's a big question. So I would say for us, again, we're an environmental NGO present in this part of the world for about 25 years. So again, we have a lot of expertise on the ground in terms of marine ecosystems, status, where the migratory corridors for whales are, how the marine turtles, for example, behave, and so on. We have also started looking at the socioeconomic benefits from healthy seas, again, not only related to the shipping industry, but to other economic sectors. For us, it's important, again, to come together and have that constructive dialogue with the real economy players and looking at what makes sense, as I mentioned earlier, right? Like in terms of economic benefits, social and environmental. We have worked as well through our partners around the world. We're publishing reports. Again, we're very open to collaborate and find the right solutions to really kind of pivot to the next steps. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Dorota, to you, what steps do you see are the next steps for IMO to make sure there's a legal clarity and this is executed the way you probably have imagined it?
We will, of course, take an active part in the next meetings of the BBNJ. There is another meeting of the preparatory commission planned for next year. And as an observer delegation to the COP, we will, of course, take part into the in the negotiations of the next measures that will be developed under the BBNJ, and we will ensure our main focus will be on keeping our member states informed and keeping the flow of information and collaboration and cooperation between the BBNJ framework and IMO legal framework.
All right. Well, I think we finished right on time. So the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, BBNJ, in simple terms, also called as the High Sea Treaty. The subject matter experts are here. It's a great opportunity for each one of you to catch them after this session and know more about it. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, Dorota, for bringing all that knowledge to this session. And thank you, Marina, for your contribution.
Likewise. Thank you.
Can we have a group photo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Come in the front.
Mhm.